Some have said the Big Ten wouldn't add more schools, but the commissioner spoke earlier today, and, well, that's not what I heard.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football live from Big Ten Media Days. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Realignment, coaching carousel, the portal, and more, getting you ready for the season. We've always got you covered. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We'll talk about what Ryan Day had to say at Big Ten Media Days. He was all over the press conference space here at Lucas Oil Stadium, and so too was Bret Bielema, and he might be the funniest coach in the Big Ten, and I'm here for it. Should he feel confident this year? That's a different question. So we'll start with the commissioner. Tony Petitti took the stage and did not say anything about conference realignment or expansion in his scripted opening remarks. He started talking about, the conference as a whole, Caitlin Clark and all the athletics that success that the Big Ten has had, national championships, individual championships, and projected a place of strength, because that's where the Big Ten is. And, it was a very generic sort of statement. And it wasn't even all about football, like I said, which I found to be a little bit odd because we're at Big Ten Football Media Days, but he's the commissioner of the entire conference, not just of football. But I asked him about conference expansion and what sort of criteria they look for. And he mentioned the holistic approach that they take, because they're factoring in football, they're factoring in geography, they're factoring in education and AAU status as well. When he talked about the 4 new members, Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA, he very quickly in his scripted remarks noted that they're all AAU members. Do you know who's not an AAU member? Which, for those who don't know, is an academic designation. Florida State. Now, what have I said for many, many years in the podcast space talking about realignment? President's vote on realignment. It's going on my gravestone. It is going on my gravestone one day. Do presidents care about the academic standing of a university they're going to add to their conference, even if it's primarily for athletics reasons? Might depend on the school. Overall, the answer is yes. I do not see it as being a big hurdle for Florida State and Clemson making their way into the Big Ten. And Clemson, I believe, is AAU. Florida State, it is not. That could change. I don't know if it would change within the next couple of months, per se. But as we talked about earlier this week on the show, Florida State's going to be in the ACC through the 2025 season. That is the expectation, barring a change before the August 15th deadline, and nobody expects that, myself included. So, if you're Florida State and you're trying to determine, which I don't think they are, I think they have an idea of where they're going to land. The Big Ten and the SEC are both open to the idea. They are not shutting it down. Tony Petitti gave an almost identical line to Greg Sankey last week when I asked him about conference expansion, what their mindset is. We are, and I mean, he got to this point, Sankey got to this point a couple times, Petitti, I think just once or twice maybe. We're focused on our 18 members. That is code for we're open to the idea. I love Charles Barkley. I hope inside the NBA sticks around forever, because losing it would just be a tragedy for everyone that is a basketball fan. Charles Barkley had an SNL skit a long time ago called the Charles Barkley Post-Game Translator app, which is what I'm attempting to do here as best I can when we get actual comments and insights, or lack thereof, from commissioners or athletic directors, coaches, or whoever with regards to realignment and expansion and such. Saying we're focused on our 18 teams, that rules out absolutely, positively nothing. That keeps everything in play. But it also covers them on the other side of the equation. Because if they don't add those schools, there is no perception that could reasonably or honestly be painted of, you were looking to add schools and you missed on them and they got away and they went to this conference over there. That's not the case at all. Easy retort there. We never said we were actively looking at expansion. We monitor the terrain, but we feel confident in the teams we have. We have 18. We're focused on our 18 teams, and that's a number that we're comfortable with. And Greg Sankey, we have 16. We're 16 strong. 16 is our today. 16 is our tomorrow. These are not comments ruling it out. So for those who are of the belief Florida State and Clemson have nowhere to go, assuming they get out of the ACC, which isn't a given, but I think, not a lawyer, but that's just my guess as to what happens, is they end up getting out. The Big Ten of the SEC will have like a reverse bidding war, where it's who can come up with the deal. Like, it'll be a bidding war, but not a bidding war, because maybe they don't want to give Florida State and or Clemson a full media rights share, and they want to get them at a discount. But this is why I said reverse bidding war. If both conferences come at it with that mentality of, no, we don't want to cut up the pie, or we don't think they add enough value, or our television partners can't work out the details for all this sort of stuff to make it, worth giving them a full share, and we got to give them a partial share, who can give them the better partial share? That's entirely possible. But neither one of these conferences are just shutting down any sort of conversation. Yeah, the Big 12 would love to have Florida State and Clemson. Florida State and Clemson would not love to go to the Big 12. That is not the reason they'd get out of the ACC. I have said before and will say again, for those who might be tuning into the show for the first time, which I appreciate you doing, by the way. Hope you stick around. Hit that subscribe button for me. Thank you. But Florida State and Clemson going to the Big 12 is at best a lateral move. And I do not see how, barring the influx of outside money, perhaps private equity, that is financially viable to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to go to a conference that Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, they're having their media days as well, is adamant that that's going to be the number 3 league in the country for revenue, and kind of went a little bit on the attack with that remark towards the Big 12. And he wants to keep his league above them. There's no great appeal to be in the Big 12 for the cost of several $100 million. Now, is there appeal to go in the Big 10? Is there appeal to go in the SEC? Yep, there absolutely is, because that's where those programs want to be. And the other thing Petitti said that was noteworthy was, when I pressed him on the criteria, he said, yeah, it's a holistic approach, but we're also not going to hide the ball that football is a big part of it. That football brand, viewership, success, Florida State and Clemson bring all that into the league. You want to talk about brand? Clemson's won 2 national championships within the last 10 years. Florida State has got one. They just went undefeated, won the ACC. Like, these are programs that, Clemson might be in a worse place in 2024 than Florida State is as a football team. They might be closer. We'll see how this whole no transfer portal thing works out for Dabo Swinney. But that doesn't matter as much, because the brand of Clemson makes them very appealing. And they would bring in a new market, and Florida State would bring in a new television market, which is also one of the considerations. Brand, football pedigree, it's all there. And the AAU aspect, look, if that's a serious hurdle for some presidents, maybe it is. A lot of proud academic institutions in the Big Ten Conference. You can apply to become an AAU member. You can take steps to move in that direction. And remember, this is a move that wouldn't happen. Florida State and Clemson actually joining the Big Ten wouldn't happen until 2026. So that's when FSU would need to get AAU status by. That is 100% viable. So the Big Ten is not shutting down expansion ideas. I think they're taking a wise approach, which is we'll wait and see. Not going to commit one way or the other. We're just going to say we're focused on our members. Yeah, well, that opens the door to swing in either direction if and when Florida State get out of the ACC. But they have to win the lawsuit first. They have to actually, be able to get out, or they might be stuck in the ACC. So, fun times ahead. What's Ohio State's biggest question going into 2024? First, we're going to talk about FanDuel. I love sports, lots of sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and sports aren't sportsing like I want them to, but FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that I am in the mood. And everything you could possibly want for college football is over there. It's fun to see how the lines move because they fluctuate depending on where the money comes in. It's just interesting. It's good information. It can make you a more informed college football fan. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com, start making the most out of your summer, and get hyped. Have something on the line. Have a little juice for this college football season because you can bet win totals, games, championship odds. It's all over there, no matter what team you're a fan of or what conference you're a fan of. FanDuel.com, start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. The biggest question for Ohio State this year, positionally, might be what they get out of the quarterback spot. But big picture, are they finally going to beat Michigan? I think so. Jay Stevens, Locked On Buckeyes, joining me here on the show. Look, this is something that is going to be asked to Ryan Day several times throughout the year. You could even have questions about Michigan pop up when Ohio State isn't playing Michigan, because as is usually the case, I expect Ryan Day to blast into oblivion everybody that they play this year other than Michigan and Oregon. So is that the biggest question for Ohio State this year? Is it just all about the Michigan factor, even more so than the October 12th meeting in Eugene against the Ducks?
Absolutely. It's easily the biggest game of the year. That's not a knock to Oregon. Oregon's a really good football team, but Michigan is Michigan. They've beat Ohio State 3 years in a row. It is called the game for a reason. It's Ohio State's biggest rival. And Ryan Day has to get this monkey off his back. He has to get over this hurdle. It's players like Denzel Burke and Jack Sawyer and Emeka Egbuka that are actually at Big Ten Media Days on Tuesday that are coming back to Ohio State. They have unfinished business, and part of that unfinished business is beating Michigan Thanksgiving weekend in 2024. So absolutely, that's the biggest thing with this team, and you can go 11-0. If you lose that game, it's just like the previous 3 seasons, and Ohio State and the players have a lot of looking inward saying, what is wrong with us? Why is this happening over and over?
Yeah, and I do think it's different this year because if Ohio State beats Oregon, loses to Michigan, goes 11-1, the difference is they could still end up winning the national championship. That could still be in play there. But at home, they've opened, according to our friends at FanDuel, as a 9.5-point favorite. That's a game that you just got to win. Like, there are just no excuses. The number of players that Michigan lost, are they going to be a good team? Yes, they have 3 players on the preseason Big Ten honorees list, which I find to be a strange list. Personally, it's not a complete side of the ball. It's just 12 players, but Ohio State's got 4 of them. Michigan's got 3. Oregon's got 2. And then you got a handful of other players from the rest of the Big Ten teams. So it's natural to have that sort of expectation. But Ryan Day was asked about beating Michigan. Here's what he had to say.
I think when you look at year in and year out, the expectations are what they are, and every year you have an opportunity at Ohio State. You have an opportunity to win every game, and that's what the expectations are, and that's because of the great players and coaches that have come before, and we certainly understand that. And after every year, you got to identify what are the things that have held you back from reaching your goals, knowing that we want perfection and we want to win the game at the end of the season, and in particular, like last year, what was it that prevented us from finishing off that last drive or getting off the field on defense, and why didn't we do that? And it's easy to say, well, it comes down to a play or two, but that's not really the case. We need to do is we need to leave no doubt. Don't leave it to one play. Don't leave it to one call. Don't leave it to one stop. Leave no doubt when you're on the field, and we're not going to get into all the reasons or all the things that we've done to try to address that, to get that fixed, but we worked hard on that, and we feel good about where we're at going into the season.
That game, Jay, is always going to be hyped up. It's always going to be big. Now, Paul Feinbaum took it to the extreme because why not? That's what Paul's been doing lately. I talked about his USC take on yesterday's show. Patently absurd, completely ridiculous. And he had another one here for a guy who is 39-3 against the Big Ten as Ohio State's head coach. He said if you lose to Michigan, you fire Ryan Day. Like, this is nonsense, right? Like, the complete and utter nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I was on the train at one point saying, hey, if Ryan Day loses this game once again this year, he's gone. And then I had the realization he could still win the conference. He could win the national championship. He could end the year with a conference championship ring and trophy. Same for the national championship ring and trophy. And so as much as I do put the emphasis on that game, and that's very, very important, if he turns that thing around the next week and wins the conference, and about a month and a half later wins the whole thing, yeah, that loss still stings. But he did something nobody has done at Ohio State since 2014, which was Urban Meyer's only national championship win at Ohio State. So Paul Feinbaum has been on this hot take streak lately. I'm not a big fan of all the things that he says. Stay in the South, bro. Stay down there, be the mouth of the South, and let us up here in the Midwest deal with the stuff going on at Ohio State.
Like LeVar Ball might say, stay in your lane. Stay in your. I mean, I don't know. Did you see the interaction with him and Lane Kiffin at SEC Media Days last week?
I heard the audio.
Lane Kiffin going up there saying, I don't, you said this and that. You said Saban would retire. That didn't happen. I don't really know what you're good at. And I was like, oh, that's good.
I say that sarcastically about Paul Feinbaum. He has done a good job of making a name for himself, being very successful in this business. But also, like, the whole hot take thing,
it just gets old. I get tired of it.
Yeah, it gets very old. If you have a hot take, make sure it's backed with some type of fact and not just your own opinion. That's not just grabbing. Oh, Day fired. No, don't grab it.
But even if you're in the hypothetical realm, keep it within, this galaxy of being reasonable or logical. Like, not everything you disagree with is clickbait, but it's just so, it gets pretty tiresome. And like the standard at Ohio State is incredibly high. And Ryan Day talked about that as well.
Well, I think we're all excited about the opportunity, and we all see what could be, but we also know that, that's kind of wasted energy at this point. We got to maximize, the preseason. But at the same time, you do. I mean, you get excited about this team. What's possible, and then there's a reason why these guys decided to come back and forego their opportunity in the NFL, and that's to go do exactly that. And that's okay. I mean, these guys are proud and they're competitive and they want it and they think big, and that's the way it should be. But at some point, we got to get back to work and focus on what matters.
National championship or bust, Jay? That was the way the question was posed because of what Denzel Burke said earlier today at Big Ten Media Days. Is that how you are viewing this season for Ohio State, given the players returning, Ryan Day and how long he's been there without winning a national championship, which is an insane standard to hold, but like, okay, it's Ohio State. The amount of NIL that's gone into this roster, reportedly well over $20 million. Like, is it national championship or bust for the Buckeyes?
Yes, and I'm only saying that because the players are saying it. My expectations for the team would be different if it wasn't for Denzel Burke saying it, I believe, in the spring, natty or bust. And then you have Jack Sawyer, who is kind of saying the same thing, and you have the leaders in the clubhouse that are all saying natty or bust, natty or bust. Will Howard came to Ohio State to raise his draft stock, but to also win a natty. And so when you're saying that in practice, in the spring, in the summer, heading into fall camp, yeah, that is the expectation. That is because that's what you're saying. Ohio State every year has 3 goals: beat Michigan, win conference, win the natty. That's not my standard. That's their standard. And based off their standard, that's what I need to hold them to, because that's what they're holding them to. So yes, absolutely, it's natty or bust expectations for the team, because that's what they're saying inside the locker room.
I respect that sort of mentality. I think it puts, some pressure on yourself, but if you feel like you're ready for it, certainly Ohio State, they might have the best overall roster in college football outside of this team down in Athens, Georgia, who I'm told have recruited at a very high level over the last few years. But those reports are wildly unconfirmed, of course. Jay Stevens, Locked On Buckeyes. Jay, appreciate the time as always.
Really enjoyed it, Spencer. Let's do it again.
Yes, indeed. The season is so very close. It's close for everybody, including Illinois. Bret Bielema is the head coach at Illinois, for those who were not aware. And he is the best coach in the Big Ten at one thing in particular. That's coming up next. Bret Bielema took the stage for Illinois here at Big Ten Media Days and was far and away the most entertaining coach that went up there. Sunny Verma joining me here of Locked On Illini. what did you make of what Illinois' head coach said up here in Indianapolis?
You know, Bret continues his streak of the head coach who I want to have a post-media day beer with. Basically, every year that he's been coaching in the league. Each coach is allotted 15 minutes, and I think he talked for about 12 of them.
Yeah, he did. He only took one question.
There was only time for one question because he loves to talk, and you know, he's got stories upon stories about him. Stories. I think he talked about. He's got 16 years worth of stories now, and so you know. But I did get some side time with him, and Bret is one of those guys who you really saw the coaching aspect. Like what he really enjoys is you know, growing these players into men. He talked about what he does every single year is he picks the 3 guys and he drives them literally from Champaign to media day, and you know, he kind of coaches them. Hey, these are the type of questions that are going to be coming. Easy questions, difficult questions, and then really difficult questions. But you know, he lets them know, hey, there's 54 players that are going to be at Big Ten Media Day. 54 of the best players in the conference, and you 3 are 3 of them. And so, you know, he wants their players to really grow and embrace their role, you know, their leadership role, because the season is only 40 days away. And you know what, like the 3 guys that he's bringing in, he's going to be counting on for that leadership role. You are now the face of Illinois football. You know, Isaiah Williams is not there anymore. Jazon Newton is not there anymore. Keith Randolph is not there anymore. You guys are the next in line in the lineage of Illinois football. And so, you know, it's just nice to see a coach who really does care about his players.
Which players did he bring, first of all? And secondly, what do you make of, you know, what's needed from them, and why do you think those were the players that Bret Bielema brought?
Well, he talked about it in his opening presser. Like the 3 guys that he brought, Gabe Yakis, Seth Coleman, and Pat Bryant, are 3 guys who's played their entire careers for Illinois. And you don't know if that's necessarily going to happen from here on out with the way college football is looking. So,
guys just leave.
Yeah.
Even guys that are, you know, starting. And I think you'd think traditionally of a school like Illinois, where they've been in the Big Ten, as that sort of program that loses guys to the quote-unquote bigger brands.
Exactly. And he talked about actually Gabe, one of the linebackers on our team, who he decided to bring. He wanted to bring this year because he thinks he could make it to the NFL next year. Gabe is a guy who SEC teams have been trying to sniff around in the past, and that's just a reality. But Gabe trusted his coach, trusted the staff here, and now he wanted to bring Gabe to Media Day knowing that Gabe might be playing at the next level next year. And so he's the type of guy who said, you know, I don't want to bring a player because he's a you know, he's going to be senior next year, so I'll bring him next year. It's like, no, Gabe has worked his butt off. And so he wanted to give him that opportunity this year to, you know, really embrace this role as one of our key players.
Every coach at some level comes to media days and, you know, is saying what media people might want to hear, what fans might want to hear. And I think every coach at some level is genuine in their confidence in the football team that they have, because they know how much work has gone into putting that team together, acquiring all the players on the roster. But the outside narrative on Illinois, it's not particularly strong. They are picked close to the bottom. I think it was 16th out of 18th in the Big Ten preseason media poll from, I believe it was USA Today.
I think it was 13.
13. Yeah, 13. But regardless, like they're closer to the bottom than they are to the top, and it certainly is getting harder now. Exactly. You know, Tony Petitti talked about bringing in the 4 new teams in Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA. Illinois is one of those teams that, you know, people might look at and say it's going to get a lot harder for them to win. What do you make of Bret Bielema's confidence? Do you think it's just kind of projection? Do you think he really believes it? Somewhere in between? How should Illinois feel going into this year?
I mean, it's probably somewhere in between, but he's raised the floor substantially from where his predecessors had the team. We still kind of lack maybe the high-end talent that some of the top half of the Big Ten has, but Bret, at this point, I think Brett McMurphy released a fantastic tweet where he talked about he's got the best record in the first 3 years at Illinois since John Malkovich in the late 80s. So, again, you know, Illinois isn't exactly a sexy brand, but we're in games. And last year, the story of last year was we lost more games by less than a touchdown than almost any other team in the country last year. And this year he kind of talked about how
call you Scott Frost's
please,
Nebraska.
Oh, no, let's not do that. Let's not go there. But he just talked about, when he came to Illinois, he had to teach the players not to lose because that's just what they were kind of used to. And now he's at the point where he's trying to, now that they're not losing, he needs to flip the switch and teach them how to win. And that's kind of what the goal of year 4 is going to be. Yeah,
and one of the guys who is not here but is going to be a large factor in whether or not Illinois gets to that point is quarterback Luke Altmaier, because this is not a great lineup of Big Ten quarterbacks. I think of the Power 4 leagues, the Big Ten is actually the weakest of the bunch at the quarterback position. But in this conference, I don't look at Luke Altmaier and see anything at this point other than a guy who, can make a throw from time to time, but his primary feature is that he can run, that he's got mobility. How does he take a step forward with his passing this year?
I think you'll be surprised, Spencer. I think, what you've kind of said is kind of the national narrative, just because everyone saw that Penn State game. And you had the 4 interceptions in the first half.
That was not great. That was not great.
It was pretty sickening. But he actually finished the season having 10 touchdowns to 3 interceptions in his last 6 starts. He's a guy who improved, but because he lost, because of that Penn State first half, and then he eventually lost that job to John Paddock. And I wouldn't even say he lost the job. It's just John Paddock threw for 525 yards against Indiana, and it's hard to bench a player after he just throws for 525 yards. And so I think, a lot of people might be down on Luke, but Bret actually talked about Luke a little bit today, saying that, when they had the conversation with him last year that they were going to continue starting John Paddock, Luke did not put his head down. He instead basically just took notes and, asked John, why did you throw this? Why did you do that? Basically looking to learn. A lot of people forget that last year was Luke's first full season as a college football starter. He had his first 10 starts last year. And so, my hope is, as a sophomore, the game starts slowing down. And I genuinely think he's a top half in the Big Ten quarterback.
I don't think that's as tough of a list to crack, depending on how a couple of young guys do, like Aiden Childs at Michigan State, mega talent. Dylan Raiola at Nebraska, mega talent. But I'll get you out of here on this for today's show, Sunny. What do you expect? This is kind of the unofficial start of the college football season in 2024. What do you expect from Illinois right now? What does a good season look like?
Our over-under is 5.5, and I genuinely now lean towards the over. The message about him saying, I've taught them not to lose. Now my job is to tell them how to win. I think, it kind of explains the transition process of being a head coach of a program like Illinois, who historically isn't one of the top programs in the Big Ten. But this man has years and decades of experience. He coached at Wisconsin, he coached at Arkansas, and then for a while he took a break and he learned from Bill Belichick, at the NFL level. He knows what he's doing when he took that job at Illinois. He knew it wasn't going to be easy, and it's going to take a year-by-year process, and I'm really excited to see what he has in store for year 4.
Sunny Verma, Locked On Illini, joining me live and in person here at Lucas Oil Stadium at Big Ten Media Days. Sunny, my man, appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Spencer.
Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.